Welcome to This Explainer. Today we're diving right into a topic that completely challenges our deepest assumptions about aging and movement. We're talking about starting ballroom dance after 40, 50, or even 60.
So let's just address the elephant in the room right off the bat, okay? Is it literally too late to start dancing? Because, society basically tells us that picking up something as physically and socially demanding as ballroom is exclusively a young person's game. I mean, if you've ever watched a ballroom competition on TV or even just seen dancers gliding effortlessly across a local studio floor, it is so incredibly easy to convince yourself that your window has completely closed. The whole idea of walking into a dance studio in your 40s, 50s, or 60s, it can feel absolutely intimidating. You might expect the learning process to be messy, super awkward, or maybe even physically impossible. But the truth is actually infinitely more hopeful. Across studios everywhere, tons of dancers are beginning their journey exactly at this stage of life. Often, it's kicked off by a major life change, maybe a health update, or just a long-held curiosity they've finally decided to act on. Because stepping onto the dance floor later in life isn't actually about having this perfect, innate sense of rhythm. The fear of being too late is completely universal, but as we're going to see, it's also entirely misplaced.
When late starters walk through those studio doors for the first time, there's usually this immediate, terrifying thought. Everyone else here has real training, and I'm the only beginner. It's that intense, self-conscious belief that you've just walked into a room full of secret professionals, everyone knows exactly what they're doing, and you are going to stick out like a sore thumb. But the reality? It is entirely different. You aren't expected to be perfect. Late starters very quickly figure out that when social dances come around, they can just ask a partner to rotate positions and try a move again, even if a turn totally flopped the first time. The entire goal fundamentally shifts away from looking flawless, and it transforms into this really welcoming, shared experience of just learning together.
Take a listen to what one dancer had to say. They walked into their very first class dealing with stiff shoulders and just crushing self-consciousness. They said, "I started after retirement, and I wish I'd tried sooner." See, they originally thought the absolute hardest part was going to be mastering all that complex footwork. Instead, they were pleasantly surprised by how accessible the whole process actually was. Within literally just a few weeks, all that initial fear just melted away, and it was replaced by a very genuine regret that they hadn't started this journey decades earlier. It completely reframes the whole narrative from, "I'm way too old for this," to, "Wow, look what I've been missing all these years."
So how exactly does that fear melt away? Well, it really boils down to three structural benefits in the way ballroom is actually taught. First up, pairing steps with music counts. This takes what feels like an overwhelming swirl of movement and breaks it down to this totally solvable mathematical puzzle. It makes practice feel incredibly doable. Second, partner drills for steadiness. When you practice specific drills with a partner, a moment that could have been super awkward and unbalanced suddenly becomes really steady and supported. And third, just dropping the need for perfection. The way the class is framed allows you to stop worrying about looking like a pro and just let you focus on the raw mechanics. Put all three of those pillars together and they turn the seemingly impossible task of dancing into a highly manageable step-by-step process.
And get this, the surprises aren't just emotional or mental, they are deeply physical. One dancer noted, "My back felt better once I moved correctly." I mean, we constantly worry that starting a new physical activity later in life is just going to lead to exhausted joints or worse, injuries. But this particular late starter framed their entire decision to dance as a strictly practical one. After years of long work days and building up all this muscle tightness, they joined specifically to help their posture and mobility. And they stuck with it because ballroom actually made those health benefits measurable. They moved completely away from the fear of physical strain and moved right toward actual tangible relief and better mobility.
Now, this physical transformation doesn't just happen by magic. It happens through highly specific, guided movement cues from the teacher. They literally tell you exactly where to place your weight, how to maintain your frame, and exactly when to soften your knees. The teacher creates this structured, guided environment that completely changes the experience. For a lot of late starters, having an expert explicitly tell you how to align your body feels 100 times safer and far more effective than just trying to guess your way through some solitary workout at the local gym. It's guided, it's intentional, and it works.
But of course, physical safety is only half the battle here. We have to talk about the social barrier. One quote that really hit the nail on the head was, "I thought I'd be embarrassed. Instead, I felt welcomed." Social pressure is arguably the single biggest barrier to starting anything new later in life. In fact, several dancers explicitly mentioned that the hardest part of this whole shebang wasn't learning the dance steps at all. It was literally just having the guts to walk into a room where they expected to face absolutely crushing social judgment. But that expectation of being humiliated, it is almost immediately met with a profound sense of welcoming and belonging.
And why is it so welcoming? Because instructors actively dismantle that fear of judgment. Instead, they completely normalize being the new kid. And honestly, this is where the magic happens. The biggest shift for late starters is when teachers treat technique as a constant work in progress. In these stories, the winning moments are incredibly small, but they are so powerful. It's about getting paired with a partner who is wonderfully patient. It's about getting just one clear correction at a time, rather than a super frustrating list of 20 different things you're doing wrong. By normalizing the beginner experience, instructors help you relax enough to actually hear the music, instead of just listening to your own nerves.
So knowing all of this, the mental shifts, the physical support, the welcoming vibe, how do successful late starters actually navigate this brand new hobby? Well, the sources reveal they follow a very specific pattern. Let's call it the late starter's blueprint. This is basically the concrete playbook that shows up time and time again in the journeys of dancers in their 40s, 50s, and 60s who managed to turn a totally terrifying first class into a lifelong passion.
Let's break down the 4 steps of this blueprint. Step 1. Pick the right entry point. You want to seek out beginner group classes or private lessons that focus on fundamentals, not crazy advanced choreography. Step 2. Learn the why. The successful starters don't just blindly memorize dance moves, they really focus on understanding the mechanics underneath it all, like frame, timing, and weight transfer. Step 3. Practice in short loops. This is absolutely vital for building muscle memory. And finally, Step 4. Choose a friendly social path. Find community socials that have clear, established norms for welcoming first-timers. Following these 4 actionable choices completely takes the mystery out of the learning process.
I really want to zoom in on step 3 for a second because it is an absolute game changer. Short loops. Instead of trying to master a full, exhausting 3-minute routine, you just repeat tiny step patterns until they feel natural at the speed of the music. Step, step, close. Step, step, close. You just repeat that short, snappy sequence at class tempo until your body does it on autopilot. Practicing in these short, rhythmic loops dramatically reduces the intimidation factor. It transforms your practice from, oh my gosh, just let me get through these steps, to a focused session that dancers actually start looking forward to for a sense of calm and energy.
And that brings us to a fundamental truth of this entire journey. Confidence comes from consistency, not speed. When you are first starting out, the learning curve is probably going to feel incredibly slow. And you know what? That is perfectly okay. The source material heavily emphasizes that just showing up regularly creates this invisible momentum. Day to day, you might not notice a massive improvement, but by practicing those short loops, by consistently walking through those doors, that momentum builds up behind the scenes until, suddenly, it just clicks. You aren't racing to the finish line here. You are building a foundation step by step. Ultimately, the most common happy ending in all of these stories, whether the dancer started at 40, 50, or 60, is simply that they feel capable again. The dance room ceases to be this terrifying place of judgment or intimidation. Instead, it transforms into a sanctuary, a place to feel connected. It becomes a place where they prove to themselves, song after song and class after class, that their bodies are resilient, they're capable, and they are far from being too late to start something truly beautiful.
Which leaves us with one final and I think very important thought to consider today. If all these stories are true, if the structure is absolutely there to support you, and if your body isn't actually too late to start, what will your first step be? Are you going to look up a local beginner class? Will you maybe seek out a friendly community social? As you've seen, progress really just comes from learning to move with someone else and leaving the room feeling more connected than when you arrived. So I highly encourage you to think about what that first step looks like for you. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I really hope this has shown you that a whole new world of movement is always well within your reach.